There we go. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. We had to kind of delete and start over, but now it seems to be working. I'm going to wait for Instagram to catch up. And we are officially live on all of our platforms. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Child Life Q&A. I'm Deanna Bryan. I'm the program manager at Hope for HIE. And as always, I'm here with Annie Gunning, who is our amazing certified child life specialist and grief counselor. And we're diving into a topic that so many parents and caregivers in our community ask about and bring to our staff's attention. And that's how to talk to your child about their HIE diagnosis in a way that's age and stage appropriate and is empowering and hopefully uplifting as well. So whether your child is starting to ask questions or you're unsure of how to even begin a conversation, Annie has a lot of amazing strategies and tips in doing it with compassion and clarity. So that's what she's here for today. So thank you.
Yes, of course. I am happy to talk about this because, like you said, we hear about it. We hear families asking so much. And I think what I hear from parents most, and this is with any diagnosis really, that they don't want to say the wrong thing or they don't want to scare their kids. Those are, I feel like, the things that holds them back from like sharing more information. They just don't want to mess it up. But I am here to tell you, you will not mess it up. You will be able to talk to your children really because you know them best. And that I'm just going to give you some guidelines and tips on things that could make that go a little bit better. But just knowing your children best really is going to be your guide because you're going to go with your gut on what they need.
Yeah. Before we get started, if you could always introduce yourself, who you are, what you do for Hope, what a child life specialist is, and how that can be related to this conversation, how you can child life specialist everywhere can help with things like this.
Yes, absolutely. So a child life specialist is someone who a lot of times works in the hospital. That's where you find most child life specialists, but we also work in community roles like with Hope for HIE. And we help kids and families cope with stressful experiences that typically revolve around some type of a medical diagnosis, medical trauma, or any type of just big stressful change that can happen. So our specialty is talking to children on a developmentally appropriate level and helping explain this to them, or these different things to them in a way that they can understand, and then helping them cope with those big changes and these challenges, and always to decrease the stress and anxiety while increasing their confidence and their coping skills in a positive way.
Yeah.
And so for Hope for HIE, I'm available all the time. And we always say that for anything specific, whenever we do these Q&As, I always give the general information, but just knowing that I'm always here to go over a specific situation or encounter, test, procedure, surgery with your child. That's what I'm here to help with.
Yeah. So Annie, for those of you who don't know, like she said, she offers individualized support that's tailored to whatever you need. So you can always reach her at HIE.support, which is our comprehensive support network, along with our social worker, Jen, and a slew of other resources that we have available too, of our support programs and services. So let's just start with getting started. So whether families are experiencing something with their kids, maybe they're noticing them talking about their diagnosis a little bit more, or talking about, hey, I feel a little bit different, or I'm recognizing or observing these things about myself, or if none of those conversations have even happened yet, but you're sensing that it's something that you want to talk about. The question is there an age? Is there a stage where parents should start noticing or recognizing these things or start having this conversation? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really no specific age, I would say. It really depends on the child. So if your child is starting to ask questions, noticing some differences and like, well, they're doing that, but I'm doing it this way. If they're showing curiosity about their doctor's appointments, medications, asking questions like, why do I take this? There are different abilities and things that they can do. That's really the telltale sign that they're ready to talk about it and they need a little bit more information. So I wouldn't say, okay, now that they're 4, now that they're 3, or 10 that we need to tell them. It just depends on, you got to read their cues. And when they start asking, that's when the conversation probably should start.
Yeah. And what signs would suggest that they're starting to feel ready or they need to start knowing a little bit more about their diagnosis and understanding it a little bit better?
Right. So, like I said, if they are asking those questions and they are just kind of making these observations about themselves, they're likely ready. If they're not showing an interest, there's no need to force it though. So again, don't pressure yourself or pressure them to think, well, we got to tell them. We need to make sure that they know, because if they're not noticing things or asking things or just making comments or observations, they maybe they don't. So let their questions guide you and only give as much information as they need to feel heard and supported. So whenever a child like asks me a question, or a child asking about like a diagnosis, like what is HIE, I always put that back on them. Well, tell me what you think it is. And then that really gives you a good starting point. Then you know, okay, where do I need to start? And okay, I know what they think it is. Do I need to clear this up? I mean, and I've heard both ends of the spectrum. Like I will ask a kid, well, what do you think it is? And a kid will, this is for different diagnoses. They might tell me something. I'm like, that's really good. Like you explained that really well. And there's other times I'm like, oh gosh, that is not that is not it at all. So it just gives you some idea of, where you need to start. And then
Yeah.
it just needs to be simple and truthful. They don't, like, these conversations don't have to happen. Like, we're not giving them all the information at one time. Because when they ask that question, you can just answer in that one simple, honest, truthful way. And then they might not have any more questions. We don't want to give them all the information. That's why when we put it back on them, we're really wanting to know what they want to know. What do you
Yeah.
think it is? Because otherwise, if we just start talking about everything, they might not be ready for that or need to know that. So we really want them to be the ones to kind of guide us. And then that's going to just change and evolve as they get older and they enter those new developmental stages and are able to process things on different levels.
Yeah. And this is something that I think a lot of parents bring up, and that's fear based. Just worrying about talking about HIE will overwhelm them, would traumatize their child, will make them feel worse about it. Um, and then, so the question really for you is that something? I mean, I would assume that that's a very valid, legitimate fear. How would
Absolutely.
you coach parents and caregivers through that,
Mhm.
and then help them feel more confident about these honest, age appropriate conversations, and try to help them reframe it in a way that builds resilience and trust and even hopefully empowerment for their kids?
Yes, and it is absolutely, like, I understandingly parents want to protect their children, right? That's
Mhm.
typically the reason, like, besides, like, I don't know what to say, I don't want to mess it up, because you just want to protect them. You don't want to do anything that's going to harm them, because these are big conversations and they're hard conversations. So we don't want to overwhelm or scare them. But typically, not giving them the information is more harmful than giving them the information. So giving them honest, simple information provides accurate information that you're in control of giving them. So then we're not just relying on them to, like, they're hearing bits and pieces. You are the one, you're the trusted adult who's giving
Mhm.
them the honest information. And that's building that communication, that's building that trusting relationship, because we want our kids to come to us when they have questions, any kind of questions, big ones or small ones. But when these big things happen that they want to know, we want them to know we're the people that you come to, right?
Yeah.
So providing this information, it builds up that trust and that relationship with them. And when we keep information, like I said, from our kids, that's when they kind of start making up their stories or
Mm.
making up things in their head that maybe aren't true and accurate. And then it takes time to, get rid of that thought, or get rid, like, that's actually not what it is. And we don't know how long that's been happening. Like, maybe that they heard something a year ago and they've been stressed about it and that's giving them all this anxiety.
Yeah.
So again, that way, like, we can sit down and have that conversation with them about kind of going back to what I said before, what do you think it is? So
Yeah.
it really is empowering for you as the parent to be the one giving them the information, the accurate information, and then also building that trust within your parent-child relationship. Because we don't want the misconceptions to keep coming up. When they
Yeah.
hear something, we want them just to come to us.
Yeah. I imagine this will be easier once we start giving them tips and
Yeah.
tools and things too, because knowledge is power, hopefully, and just even knowing what to say and how to say it will hopefully help. So,
Right.
you said a couple of things before, just in passing. You said, like, reflect their curiosity back to them. Like, if
Mhm.
they say, "What's HIE?" You say, "Well, what do you think it is?"
Right.
And then keeping it like simple and straightforward
Mhm.
language, and kind of piecemealing it depending on, not overwhelming them and giving them the
Mhm.
whole
Yep.
slice or the whole pie as opposed to a slice
Right.
of it.
Yeah.
So, in addition to those two things, what are some other ways our parents can help explain HIE to their child?
Sure. And thinking more along the lines of like age appropriate terms, right? So we want
Yeah.
to, parents know you kind of know the language and the age level of your child. And this is where that kind of individualized one on one conversation or email and communication with me can come in handy. Like
Hmm.
if you really need something specific, when we do these, I always try to give kind of the general basic information and then you can adapt. But start with, HIE means little or no oxygen or blood flowing to the brain. That's what it means. What do you think about that? I always
Hmm.
end things in like open ended questions too. Oxygen is air we breathe that helps our body so it can work. Our body needs oxygen to work. Blood is pumped from our heart to all parts of our body. It delivers important things like oxygen and nutrient to all of our cells. Like those are just simple, basic. And sometimes they'll be like, huh, okay. And then sometimes they
Hmm.
might want to ask another question, but those are just kind of your basic terms that will explain it. And then moving on forward. So I'm just going to go through maybe a little bit of dialogue that we can use or some explanations. So our brain needs oxygen and blood to help us play, to help us learn, make decisions, eat. When our brain doesn't get enough oxygen and blood, it can get injured, which might make it harder for our body to work. That's just a basic understanding. And that is what happens, right? But it's in terms
Hmm.
that the child can understand. Our brain is like our body's computer system. So it gives information to the rest of our body. So you can imagine if the information center gets hurt, it makes it hard for the rest of our body to work. If part of the brain gets injured, sometimes parts of the brain can be rewired to learn something differently, like using hearing aids to help us listen. So now you're going to relate it to something that may be relevant to them or to a friend. A walker to help our muscles move, or a speech therapist to help move our mouth so we can talk.
Hmm.
So then we're kind of talking about, so you might notice these differences, but this is us trying to get our brain to work the way we need it to work for our body. And it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy and work to rewire the brain to teach our body how to do these things. Like it doesn't happen quickly, and it's hard work acknowledging that they're putting in there. And some kids with HIE need help learning to walk or to talk, while others might need help with other things. So everybody's brain is special and different in its own way. Everybody's brain works a little bit differently. And then we can kind of move on to a little bit of like, if you're talking about, I think sometimes, and like sometimes kids get curious if they see their baby pictures or see pictures from when they're in the hospital that they don't remember from when they were younger, talking about those and explaining in those pictures. And I do have some resources that kind of help with those too. But you may have seen a baby picture. There was a tube in your mouth that was helping your body breathe and give you extra oxygen while your body and brain were working to get stronger. So again, just that simple explanation of giving you extra air. And, obviously I'm talking about being intubated and, being on a bench or something like that.
Hmm.
And then we want to make it that we're happy that the hospital and the doctors and the nurses, they are there to help us. So
Hmm.
also putting kind of that spin on it, like we get to go to the doctor instead of when we always say things like, oh, we have to go to the doctor, we have to go, like it makes it all of a sudden kind of seem like this, it's not going to be fun, which we know it usually isn't, and it's hard. But gosh, we're lucky that we get to go and we have all these people that get to help us feel better and give us medicine to help our body and make us strong, and they give us ideas. So we're glad there's hospitals and doctors and nurses and therapists that can help our bodies when they get sick or injured. And just again, kind of reframing that a little bit. But I am also very aware that many people have had difficult hospital experiences with the hospital, with staff. But when you're explaining it to your child, like that part can be separate and you can still talk about, because they might still have hospitalizations or doctor's appointments that they need to go to, and we want them, we want to encourage that positive coping, and this is one of those ways we can do that.
Yeah.
So just kind of going a little bit more and explaining epilepsy. I didn't pick, and I don't have examples for everything because there's so many different things, but like epilepsy is a condition that causes someone to have seizures that are like sudden bursts of electricity in our brain. And these seizures can make a person's body move in different ways or make them feel strange for a little while. Most kids with epilepsy, they take medicine to control their seizures. Many kids with epilepsy can still play and do things they love, like go to school and hang out with friends. So again, we're just kind of normalizing a little bit to like, yes, these things happen, but this is also the explanation of it. And this is also explanation for siblings as well. Like this is how we can also talk to siblings.
It sounds very much like when I hear you explain all these things, you're using simple language, but something else that I've noticed that you're doing is like using analogies. Your brain, if your brain is like computer system, a seizure is like an electrical current, or so there are. I like that just because I feel like it almost provides like a visual, and a tangible thing for them to relate a very abstract idea to.
Yeah.
So I really like that, and we could probably brainstorm some good ones to kind of include in our key takeaway blog too.
Absolutely, for sure. And even I think, and we might include this at the end, but one of like the things I did for Super Sibs, I think one time is I think I did like, what was it? See, I think I had a couple different common diagnoses related to HIE, and I explained them in a kid-friendly, developmentally appropriate way that like siblings could understand. So, and I think that we're attaching that, or I think
yes, we are.
We can.
Yes, we are.
But it's the same thing, because that's how kids learn. Like that's how you explain things to them. And then even when I do things one-on-one with them, I bring the concrete things in. We draw it, we color it, we make it. And that again adds that extra component of just processing and understanding.
Yeah. I think that's a good segue to our next question, which is for kids, especially younger kids, I know, how does understanding through play maybe come into play and help facilitate this?
Yes, definitely. I mean, this is like the foundation of what I do and what I love, right? We have to, this is how I work with kids and help them understand things, because play is normal and natural. And it really is how they understand their world. But and especially when we're having these big conversations and difficult conversations, bringing that play component into it, it makes it feel less scary. They understand it more, and they're more likely to be engaged in it. So yes, absolutely, we're bringing play into this. So this is not a sit down on the couch conversation. Like we can be playing with Play-Doh while we're doing it. So they're doing something sensory related. If your child needs that sensory, you can be jumping up and down, or just playing with dolls maybe, or action figures, playing in the tub. But yes, that is how they process and learn and cope too. That's how they're coping with things. So using dolls, any other medical equipment, just so they can play with it and see what it's like, and then they use it on their stuffed animal, and then you can kind of see what they're thinking and what their thought process is behind it, and you can ask them questions about it. And then using those loose parts to build things. So I've used straw and balloons to build and tape to make lungs, and we practice breathing, and then you can see how the lungs work, and there's all kinds of things you can find online and on Pinterest about making different parts of the body. But doing that and helping them visually, like you said, see it, really does help them understand. And videos, coloring pages, I mean, all of that stuff, like just being able to build it and make it and visualize it really does help.
And even kind of like you said, even having this conversation and not making it, hey, we need to talk, sit down on the couch, or like, or let's go into this room that we know where it's serious.
Right.
I kind of like that too, where it really can just be like I don't know if I want to use the word informal, but just a casual, maybe
Yeah,
just approach to it.
yeah,
And that way it might
yeah,
not seem so daunting too. And it doesn't give off the
yeah.
like, oh, this is a grave conversation because it doesn't have to be, right?
Definitely not. It's just
Yeah.
and it is. I think it can be very informal and
Mm-hmm.
informative,
Mm-hmm.
engaging conversation along with like while you're playing. And it might be like just a very short 5-minute thing. Maybe it'll be
Yeah.
20 minutes. It really depends on what they want to know and how much they can take in. And they might be like, you'll know when they hit their limit. They'll stop asking
Mm-hmm.
questions, they'll get up and do something else. Like they'll be done. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
just let them
Yeah.
have that processing time.
I know that in our kind of pre-interview for this, you had mentioned that there's one specific website where parents and caregivers can go to that has a lot of information or visuals. If you want to share what that is before we go to our next section.
Yeah, definitely. So kidshealth.org, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before in some of our other like Q&As when we've talked about some of the medical stuff, but it really does have, and we'll put the exact link, but it has some great videos, information that breaks it down for parents, teens, and kids. So whenever even I see my own like kids here in the community, I will show them because I'm like, you can't just go online and find stuff, but this has information and it's written so kids understand it in a very kid friendly and appropriate way. And it has videos and pictures. So I just like using that. And then I wanted to share too, these are in our, but like books like this,
Mm-hmm.
with the body, that shows, and it has little lifts. So here's your lungs, and it has all these little lift, little flaps that you can lift. And then another one, these are Usborne books, and I really like these Usborne books. This is another like body book that's also very helpful. And again, it just has the flaps and it talks about different parts of the body, different parts of the brain. So I don't know. I'm like, the picture's not
I
doing
know the
very well.
blur setting.
Well,
That's
yeah,
okay.
but just so you know what they look like, because I use books like this all the time, and you don't have to go read the whole book. You find the page that you need at the time
Mhm.
and let them interact with it. But they're helpful, and it gives you the words. Then you don't always have to think of the words too.
Yes. Now, to talk about, let's say you have this conversation and there are some tough emotions or some difficult, challenging responses that are yield from this. Um, and that might happen. Like, for instance, what should parents or caregivers say to their child if they ask something along the lines of, like, well, why did this happen to me? Or is it my fault that this happened to me? So,
Right.
how would you coach parents through that?
Yeah, and those are always obviously very difficult. And it's, as a parent, like it's
I know.
heartbreaking to hear
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
and I think the main thing we want to do, we want to validate their feelings and feeling mad or scared or frustrated, tired, all of those things. But also like put that one back on them too. Well, what do you think? Why do you think this happened? Because you want to see where they're coming from. Because if they think it's something that they did or that someone did, we need to know that and we need to clarify that. So
Hmm.
it is okay to like acknowledge that and then acknowledge their feeling for sure. And then share some of your own feelings and how you cope too. Like sometimes I get really scared and really frustrated too. And these are the things that help me. Them seeing you have that natural reaction and know that it's okay, that helps them know that it's okay to feel like that too. And you're allowed to have those feelings in their home and they're
Hmm.
normal. And then discussing their abilities and strengths always and how they cope with any of those big feelings that come up. So always focusing on the things that you can do really well or the things that make
Hmm.
you wonderful and unique. Like everybody's different. Nobody's the same. It doesn't matter what your abilities or disabilities are. Like everybody's different no matter what.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
just focusing on all the things that they are good at. And that, of course, I think a lot of kids in many different situations, even I think it could be like siblings to like take that blame on. And so really understanding and kind of explaining like, this is not your fault. This would never be your fault. Like kids use that magical thinking of, if I would have said this, it
Hmm.
wouldn't have happened. Or if I wouldn't have acted like this. I had a kiddo one time, a sibling that thought that her baby sister was born with a lot of different medical complexities and finally shared with her dad she thought it was because she was too loud when her mom was pregnant, because her dad would always be like, you guys be quiet, mom needs to rest. And she thought, so for like a year almost, she carried this around with her. And so, that's just kind of the thoughts that kids can have. So really just kind of making sure that they understand, and clearing that up for them.
That got me, Annie.
Yeah, when the dad told me that, I was like, oh gosh,
get it together, Deanna. That got me, what you just, that example. But like, because I feel so like, and I understand, like, I have a daughter who's a big feeler, like, so like, and it just made me go, gosh, like the things that they're thinking, like you said, it can be so much more damaging than they need to be. And that's why this conversation is so helpful, because get it out in the air, hear what they have to say, correct those misconceptions. So that's huge.
Well, and I don't tell this either, because I don't want parents to be like, oh my God, all the things that I've said. Like, we all have things. And this poor dad, when I was home, he's like, I had no idea. Like, that's not what we meant. And I'm like, oh, I know that's not what you meant. We've always been like, don't get too excited. But like, and who knew that she was gonna think that, because her brother never thought that. Like, he didn't think that. It's everybody's just different. So that's why it's just important for these conversations to happen, and explaining to them why things are happening, instead of holding it back, because it can do more damage than good by not sharing information.
And I would imagine, like you said, it's probably liberating for parents and caregivers, or whoever's having this conversation with their child, to express emotions and to demonstrate their emotions. Like, because, if you, like you said, it says, oh, I can feel this way too. If you, and it's not something that you have to hide, and you probably don't want to like sob uncontrollably. I understand that.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to ever like to where you can't control.
Where you're like hyperventilating.
But knowing like, I get sad all the time, or I get really frustrated, or when you were in the hospital, I was so scared, and this is what I did, and these are the things that helped me. Let's think of some things that could help you when you get frustrated or when you get scared. It just helps both of you then. Like, then you're building that communication with your child for them to come to you and talk about the things that are going to help.
So this is kind of a branch off a previous question, which is, how can we do this and have this conversation with our kids in a way that's not more traumatizing or causing more damage than good? Something similar parents ask that we want to address too is, how can I do this without making them feel different or feel broken, if that's not something that they were feeling before this conversation, or if they were feeling, but I just exacerbated it.
Right. Yeah. And I like to address it or talk about it in a way that's kind of like what I said before. Everyone is different, and everyone has different abilities. Like, there's no people that are doing the same things all the time. And really kind of pointing that out to kids, I think is important, because, I think there are kids they kind of want to blend in, right? They want to be doing the same things. They don't want to be, look different, but everybody's different. And so I think it's okay to kind of point out, well, but this kid likes to do this, and this kid's really good at this. So some kids are really good at math. Some kids are really good at being funny and telling funny stories. Some kids are like really good at giving good hugs. So you can point out all of the things that make them individual and unique. It doesn't have to be something you see on the outside. Like, you are so good at, picking a show for your sister to watch, or it can be something little, and then you can just kind of emphasize that and play upon that one too. Everyone isn't good at everything, but we all have strengths, and we all have things that we're good at, and we all have things we're working on too. So we all experience the world and things around us differently. So again, just talking about, what are your goals? What are your strengths, your accomplishments? And just focusing on, well, what do we want to do? Those are your goals. Somebody else has different goals. What are the things you've already accomplished? Oh my gosh, look what you've already been able to do. And just focusing on those things too. And the world's different. And then all those books, there's a ton of books, and I found hopefully some good ones that focus on different abilities and inclusion and things like that. And so I love using books, because it can be relatable for kids in a way that, that they can understand. And again, it gives the parents the words and the story to use, so they don't have to just sit there and kind of think about, what am I going to say? It kind of helps you along, but it's relatable and engaging.
Yeah. And at the end of this, we have a whole book list that
Yes.
you've created that I turned into a PDF that we'll upload and we can share and everything.
Awesome.
Something else before we move on to how we can help other family members kind of understand and be engaged in this process is how we can help, how parents can help prepare their child to talk about their diagnosis with others if they're verbal and able to do so, like at school with teachers or classmates.
Hmm.
And we don't need to go a lot into this because we have touched upon this a lot in previous Q&As, and I
Yeah.
will make sure I link the takeaways and videos for those in the blog for those who want a more thorough explanation. But it's kind of the quick overview, if you will, of how they
Yeah,
can approach
definitely.
that.
Definitely. This plays on that empowerment, right? We want them to be able to
Mhm.
advocate and feel empowered about themselves, what they need. And this goes along with having that conversation. So, what do you feel? Ask them, what do you feel comfortable sharing? Like, what do you want people to know? What do you not want them to know? Because no one's entitled to know anything, but what are you comfortable sharing? You
Mhm.
don't have to share anything about your medical, like history diagnosis that you don't want to share. So, let's figure out what you are comfortable sharing, and then we're going to have a conversation and a role play that. And
Mhm.
then I always think with kids, that's such a great way for them to kind of practice. So the parent can be the classmate or the teacher, because adults ask, we all know adults ask things too that they shouldn't. So just preparing them in all those different situations, so role playing that conversation with them. So if your friend comes up and says, why do you use a walker? What do you want to tell them? And if they don't know, you're going to give them those words to play along with that conversation and go into that conversation. I also think it's really helpful to use puppets or pets, because sometimes kids aren't really comfortable like sharing about how they're feeling, or it's harder. But if you do it through stuffed animals or puppets and you act like the two different people, they will often share how they're feeling and what they want to say through their character. And then I've done this too with, like, had a kid that wasn't really talking much, and so their dog was in the room, and I'm like, oh, what do you think your dog would say if somebody asked him this or they told him this? Oh, well, she would say, and they will say what they want to say through their animal, because it's
Yeah.
it's not as scary, right? And
Yeah.
that's more fun and that's more playful.
Mhm.
So feel free to use things around you to your advantage to engage, like whatever your kids like use that to your advantage.
Yeah. Now, when approaching this conversation, do you feel like this is, in your professional opinion, something that it's like just parent, caregiver, child? Is there room or opportunities for other family members to kind of be involved in this conversation, siblings, for example? And if so, what role, if you if you think could they play in this
Mhm.
scenario in supporting this conversation or engaging in this conversation?
Yes, I think all family members can be involved in this for sure. Grandparents, if you have aunts and uncles, cousins, anybody who needs to be involved, you can have the same conversation with all of them so everybody kind of knows what's going on. Because family members, especially other kids, are going to ask and they're going to want to know.
Hmm.
But for as far as like siblings, because they're, in the home, they're most affected, all of this I feel like definitely can apply to our siblings for sure.
Yeah.
So, and again, we've talked about some of this in our super sib stuff. We've talked about diagnosis before, and just sibling connection and coping and things like that. So I do encourage parents to become a part of super sibs. But yeah, all of this stuff definitely applies to our siblings as well. Same type of
Wonderful.
conversation.
And then we always like to end, of course, with recommended resources. So the first one is, I think you mentioned some of these before, like the Usborne books, I think you said.
Yes.
Anything to help families learn how to talk about HIE with their child? I know you had a couple of ones here you wanted to mention.
Yes. So I those books in general, just to kind of give that visual and the image of the brain and what parts of the brain, because it can talk about different parts of the brain and what works. So I really like using those books. Nat Geo Kids had a great description of what the brain is and how it works, and had some videos as well. So I think it was The Brain for Kids had a YouTube video, and it was a great video that just kind of talked about different parts of the brain and what different parts of the brain control different parts of the body. And that was a great video for kids to watch. And again, I always recommend parents, check these out first, because you'll know if it's the right developmental level, you know, for your child, if they're going to understand
Mhm.
it. Because some are better for younger and some are better for a little bit older. And then there was a great video that I found on YouTube. It was a NICU tour. So I think it was, I don't know if it was a sibling coming in to visit the baby in the NICU, but if you need to go back and kind of talk about the journey in the NICU, or you know, they're asking pictures about when they were a baby in the NICU. This video really shows like a lot of like step by step, like coming into the NICU, the isolate, and different parts of you know, the baby being in the NICU, and I thought it was really helpful. So we have that attached as well.
Yes, I will make sure to link that in the blog. Sure, and that's going to be published within the next like 24 hours, so we'll be good there. And then I know before because we have something here about like activities and stuff, but I want to make sure we kind of get to book recs. You had
Mhm.
so like a list of so many wonderful ones on our little pre-interview for this.
Yes.
So I'm gonna do a little screen share and see if it works. But so we put together a little PDF that has these. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to navigate the screen share.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the next page. Will it do it? All right. Well, anyways, there's a page for younger readers, but it's my scroll button seems to push over it. There's a whole page with younger readers. This page has all the books for like middle school age and plus, and then there were some for parent and caregivers too. So this PDF is going to be available for download to print to look at on our blog, on our key takeaways as well. But it has a whole bunch that you recommend. And then finally, I want to go back to just you and me here. The last question is, in addition to some of those books, any activities you recommend that can help children feel empowered in understanding their diagnosis and celebrating who they are?
Well, I would recommend joining SOAR. Because
And
we
we just
do,
did the drop.
yeah, so because that's like a monthly thing that I'm doing, either an activity or some type of an engagement with other kids to help them like find the commonalities. Like, hey, have you had this happen to you? Yeah, that happened to me. What are your similarities? What are the differences among you? And just a way for them to support one another. So I think any kind of activities that build confidence and self-esteem, I mean, really that's good for any kid, right? Like kids struggle with that at different points as they're growing up. So any kind of activities that are building their self-esteem and confidence, and we have those on SOAR, because we talk about advocacy and empowerment and confidence. That's kind of the things that we focus on, because we want them to be able to advocate for themselves too. So teaching them ways to advocate for themselves and who they can talk to, and how, you know, they talk to someone else, and when those are really empowering conversations and empowering qualities to have, like to be able to, you know, advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't have any specific activities that I would recommend like right now, but they're all on SOAR.
Yes. And people can reach out to you through HIE
Yeah,
support and do all that stuff too.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would
Yeah.
be happy to talk to anybody and be like, this is what's going on. Let's try this activity, or let's try this conversation anytime.
Yeah. So for those of you who joined a little bit later or missed some of the earlier conversation we had, you can go on our YouTube channel right now and go under the live section of the live playlist, and it'll show up with all of the unedited versions essentially. Anytime Annie and I freeze and have a weird face, that's what you'll see. But if you want the edited version, where I kind of go through and add the professional beginning and end, that'll be available on our YouTube Child Life playlist, along with every other Child Life Q&A we've had. I think we have dozens of them at this point.
Yeah.
Those are under a Child Life playlist on YouTube. Also, standard practice for me is to try to get the blog and key takeaways for this within like 48 hours. So definitely by Friday, end of day, I can guarantee that the blog as key takeaways will at least be published or soon to be published if it's not a good time at that point. So just take a look and keep a lookout on our website or our blog and our Instagram and Facebook and all of our social channels for all of the links to this. But again, Annie, thanks for joining. And just as like a little PSA for everyone who is present and listening right now, Jen Schaefer, our social worker, is attempting to recruit people in our community who've had this conversation with their kid before and have any type of guidance or insights or advice, what to do, what not to do, based off of their own experiences. And we're going to turn this into one of our peer perspective panels, and we're aiming to have that in July. So I believe we have a promotion for this, like a community ask or an engagement opportunity post to come out around 1 o'clock today. So keep a lookout for that, but you can also just email Jen Schaefer, our social worker, and that's Jennifer@hopeforhie.org, to see if you're interested.
I think that's an awesome idea. And I'm hoping to sit in on that and listen, because I learn so much from parents too. And I feel like so many of our parents learn the most. Like, I think there's actually research that shows parents learn the most from other parents, and that's who they go to when they need information. So I highly recommend everyone listen to the community.
And there's an incentive for you too if you participate. So we'll be sure to entice you with that as well. So thank you again, Annie. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
As we move into July or August, I think we're going to try to focus on maybe some school-related topics for people as they gear back to school. But we'll brainstorm and we'll get back to everyone, and we'll let you know what that topic's going to be soon. But for now, thanks for joining, and reach out to Annie again at HIE.support if you want some of that individualized tailored support to you and your family's needs. And until next time.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.